Y'all ever met someone so entitled they think your property is their personal shortcut? Well, she pushed me too far, and I had to teach her a muddy, messy lesson she'll never forget. Smash that like button before we jump in, 'cause the story gets wild. I live on 40 acres of quiet farmland, tucked just outside a small community governed by a homeowners association I never joined, and never wanted anything to do with. My land is old, rugged, and honest. It's been in my family for 3 generations. But peace on a farm only lasts until someone entitled decides it doesn't matter. Her name was Denise, but the community called her something else behind her back. The classic HOA Karen. Blonde bob haircut, sunglasses even at 6 in the morning, a voice sharp enough to slice through barn steel. She didn't live anywhere near my property. Yet somehow, she discovered a narrow dirt path on the south side of my land, a path I used for tractors and irrigation. She began using it as her shortcut to bypass the community's main road. And for weeks, she zipped down it every morning like she owned the place. At first, I thought it was a one-time mistake. Then, one morning I looked out and watched her SUV tear through the path so fast, it kicked up dust clouds that drifted into my barn. It didn't end there. Tire tracks cut through the grass border, my fence post got grazed, and she scared my grazing cattle more than once. I could have let small things slide. But the moment someone threatens your land, your livelihood, you act. The first time I stopped her, she rolled her window down 2 inches, just enough to talk, but not enough to treat me like a human being. She said it was more convenient, that roads are for everyone, and that I shouldn't be selfish with unused land. That's the thing about entitled people. They cover selfishness with fake righteousness, like a rotten apple polished just enough to look edible. I warned her, calmly, clearly, private property, no access, no shortcut. But entitlement doesn't listen. Entitlement waits for silence, so it can speak again. She kept coming. Every morning, every evening, fast, loud, disrespectful. And the worst moment came 2 weeks later, during calving season. A newborn calf got spooked by her SUV and nearly broke a leg trying to run. I knew then she crossed the line, so I planned a line she couldn't cross back over. 3 days later, rain was forecast. Heavy rain, the kind that turns my soil into thick, deep clay. I'd been meaning to dig a new irrigation trench on that path for months. Project long overdue. And finally, I had a reason to get it done. That morning, I parked my tractor across the edge of the path, set up 2 massive private property, no access signs, and tore up a clean 5-foot trench, deep enough to channel water, and deep enough to stop anyone who thought the world revolved around them. By noon, it was done. By afternoon, the rain arrived. The trench filled with mud, the edges softened, and the path turned into a swamp. I watched the storm roll in behind the barn, the smell of wet dirt mixed with pine. A good day's work. But I knew her, and I knew she wouldn't stop. The next morning, the moment that would live in my memory forever began. At exactly 7:16 a.m., her silver SUV turned the corner near my south gate. She didn't even slow down. She didn't even glance at the signs. She hit that muddy path with the same arrogance as always. And then, gravity, mud, and karma collaborated beautifully. Her front tires dipped. Her rear lifted. Her SUV slid forward like it was being swallowed whole. Metal groaned. Mud erupted. And before she even realized what had happened, her entire front end sank deep into the trench, nearly up to the hood. Her scream echoed across the farm like a startled peacock. I stepped outside my barn, wiping my hands on my jeans, watching her panic like she'd stumbled into quicksand. She tried reversing. The tires spun until mud shot 10 feet into the air. She tried rocking the wheel. It only sank deeper. And the best part? She still tried to blame me, even when she was the one trespassing. Her door flung open. She stomped toward me in the rain, heels sinking into mud, hair plastered to her forehead. And in that moment, I realized she thought she could intimidate me into helping her. But this time, I wasn't in the mood to be polite. The law was on my side. The land was mine. And every warning she ignored would become part of what came next. Because within minutes, she called the police and claimed I had trapped her. What she didn't know was that the officers arriving that day had been out to my farm before, and they knew exactly who she was too. And this was only the beginning. The police cruiser eased down my gravel driveway as the rain lightened to a drizzle. I stood near the barn, arms crossed, watching Denise pace furiously beside her sinking SUV, waving her hands like she was directing air traffic. The moment the officers stepped out, she launched into accusations so fast they blended together like static noise. She claimed I dug a trap. She claimed I destroyed her vehicle. She claimed I targeted her out of spite. Her voice cracked with manufactured tears, as if she were auditioning for a courtroom drama. But the officers didn't buy a single syllable. The senior deputy, a man who'd bought hay from me for years, walked over with a calm expression and asked for my side. I didn't have to say much. I pointed to the signs, the trench, the tractor tracks, the rain-soaked soil showing the fresh work. He nodded slowly, then asked the exact question that made her twitch. "Ma'am, why were you on his property after being warned?" Her face flushed red, her lips tightened, and for the first time that morning, she was speechless. It didn't last long. She demanded they tow her car at my expense. She demanded I be cited. Then she demanded something even more ridiculous. "That path should be community access," she said. The officer raised an eyebrow so high it nearly disappeared under his hat. "Ma'am, he owns this land outright. This isn't HOA jurisdiction." That word, HOA, hit her like a slap. Her world ran on rules, control, and complaint forms. She thought everything belonged to a committee. Not here. Not on my farm. Not on land carved from the hands of generations. The officers issued her a citation for trespassing and damage to private property. She shrieked at the paper like it was a death sentence. Tow truck arrived. Not the convenient kind, the industrial crane kind that charges by the minute. Mud suctioned her SUV so deep that the first attempt failed. The crane had to reposition. Her windshield cracked. A mirror snapped off. Each crunching sound of damage made her wince like her soul was shattering. By the time her SUV was finally lifted out, it looked like it had survived a full-blown demolition derby. She stormed off the property, vowing she'd take me to court. But court came sooner than she expected. 3 weeks later, I received a notice, a civil complaint. She was suing me for intentional sabotage. The absurdity made me laugh. But I prepared anyway. And it turned out, she didn't. On the day of the hearing, she arrived alone, dragging a bent folder full of disorganized papers. I brought photographs, timestamps, warnings, security footage, and weather records. The judge barely needed 10 minutes. Her case collapsed harder than her SUV did into my trench. The judge dismissed her claim, ordered her to pay my legal fees, and gently reminded her, "You cannot treat someone's private property as public convenience." But the story wasn't done. Word spread through her HOA like wildfire. People finally learned the truth about the shortcut she bragged about using. The next HOA meeting, they put her on the spot. Neighbors complained she'd embarrassed the community. Others mentioned she'd encouraged them to use my path too. One woman admitted Denise told her the land was legally open. The HOA president, a stern man who didn't like drama, finally took action. She was formally reprimanded and fined. And for someone whose life revolved around HOA approval, that hurt her more than any trench ever could. For weeks, she avoided me, drove around the long way, didn't even look in my direction if our paths crossed in town. Then one quiet Thursday morning, her car rolled up slowly to my gate. Different posture, different energy. She stepped out holding a small envelope. Her voice trembled. Not with anger, but something unfamiliar in her tone. An apology. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note and a receipt for the damages she'd caused. Paid in full. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't forgiveness. It was simply a person who learned actions have consequences. Today, that trench still runs across the southern road. still channels water perfectly after every rain, still stands as a boundary visible and symbolic. People can argue about a lot of things, but one thing remains undeniable. On a farm, on your land, respect isn't requested, it's required. And sometimes, the mud teaches the lesson better than words ever could.